I drove down a road that isn't on any map. Now I can't leave. I've made the same 5-hour drive from Maryland to my brother's place in rural Pennsylvania more times than I can count. It's a monotonous stretch of interstate, long fields, quiet towns, and occasional deer crossings. Normally, I follow the route on Google Maps just out of habit, even though I know the way by now. But that Thursday afternoon, something was off. I had left later than usual, around 1:30 p.m., and about halfway through, somewhere just outside a place called Maple Ridge, my phone screen flickered and the GPS froze. The signal vanished entirely, like I'd just driven into a dead zone. It wasn't unheard of in that part of the state. Patchy service came with the territory. But what struck me as odd was that even my downloaded offline maps wouldn't load. The screen just went gray, with the blue location dot spinning like it was searching for the ground beneath me. I figured I'd keep going until I saw a recognizable landmark or a town sign. But instead, about 10 minutes later, I came upon a small wooden roadside sign that read Harrow's Lane in cracked, barely legible white paint. It was positioned just before a fork in the road, pointing to the right. The asphalt looked newly laid, smooth and black, standing in stark contrast to the cracked and salt-worn state highway I'd been crawling along. I slowed, rolled down the window, and glanced around. No cars, no houses, no sounds, besides the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. I sat for a moment unsure. I hadn't heard of Harrow's Lane before, and when I searched for it on my phone, still no signal. But something about it made me think it could be a shortcut. Maybe it cut through some backwoods stretch that would land me closer to Route 80. Maybe I'd even get in before dark. Without overthinking, I took the right turn and merged onto the pristine, quiet lane, already congratulating myself for saving time. At first, everything seemed normal. The road gently curved through a tunnel of thick trees, the sky occasionally peeking through their sparse canopy. It was early October, and the leaves were turning, filling the scenery with rich amber tones. I turned on the radio, nothing but static. Switched to Bluetooth, but the audio stuttered and died. I chalked it up to bad reception and kept driving. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I didn't see a single mailbox, driveway, or even a streetlight. Just trees, lots of them, dense, still, and somehow unnerving in their symmetry. There was no wildlife, no birdsong, no sign of movement. It began to feel like I was driving through a photograph. Beautiful, but frozen. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The road behind me stretched endlessly, but I couldn't shake the sense that it didn't. Looked the same as when I'd first entered. I passed a tall, skinny tree that looked like it had grown twisted around itself like rope. Then I passed it again. I was sure of it. I slowed the car, trying to convince myself I was just disoriented, that the monotony of the woods was playing tricks on my perception. But then came the real gut punch. I made a slow U-turn and drove back the way I came, determined to return to the main road. 10 minutes later, I was still surrounded by the same damn trees. I passed the twisted tree a third time. The road ahead just kept winding, with no signs or intersections, no breaks in the woods, just a long black ribbon through endless green. My palms started to sweat. I opened the window again to check for any sounds. An airplane, a barking, dog, wind through leaves. But the silence was thick, absolute, pressing against my ears like cotton. I turned off the engine, stepped out of the car, and stood in the middle of the road. Nothing, no breeze, not even the buzz of insects. It was so still it felt unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. I reached for my phone again. Still, no bars. The screen glowed dimly in the darkening light, the time frozen at 5:16 p.m. My car clock still worked, ticking away normally, but my phone had apparently given up. That's when I realized the light had changed. Subtly, the sky had gone from overcast gray to a hazy orange, like sunset was trying to break through the cloud cover. But the sun wasn't visible, only the color of its dying light. I got back in the car and started driving again, faster this time. My heart was pounding with every turn. The sense of time was warping. Was I going in circles? The trees never seemed to end. Then, up ahead, I spotted something new. A wooden post. Relief washed over me like cold water. I thought maybe I'd found a trail marker or a ranger sign, anything. But as I got closer, I saw it was another old sign, nailed to a leaning tree. No exit beyond this point, it read, in smeared black lettering that looked more like burnt ash than paint. Beneath that, scratched into the wood, was something, barely legible. It takes what stays too long. My skin prickled. I kept going. I told myself I'd already committed too far to turn back again, and surely the road had to lead somewhere. I glanced at the gas gauge, still over half a tank. I could go for miles. But the road didn't agree. My headlights, which I hadn't turned on, suddenly flicked on by themselves. The dashboard clock jumped to 5:44 p.m. and stopped. No matter how long I drove after that, it didn't change. The road itself began to feel wrong under the tires. Too smooth, too quiet, like driving on polished stone instead of asphalt. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as dread crept into my spine. Then I saw movement, just a flicker in my rearview mirror. I froze. There, in the back seat, just for a second, I saw a shape. Human. Still. Watching me. I spun around. Nothing there. But the air felt different. Thicker. Colder. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. When I turned back to face the road, it was darker. The amber sky had shifted to a deep grayish blue, as if night had suddenly rushed in. I flicked the headlights to high beam. Trees. Nothing but trees. I drove, faster, checking every few seconds for the figure in the mirror, my mind unraveling with each mile that passed without change, without reason. I tried to scream but held it in, afraid of what might answer. My thoughts began to spiral. Had I blacked out? Crashed? Was I dead? In a coma? Had I driven into some government test zone or ancient cursed ground? My logic scrambled to find footing, but none came. I was trapped, not just on the road but inside it, as if the lane itself was feeding off my confusion. That was when the whispers started, faint, unintelligible murmurs that came from the direction of the back seat. I refused to look. I just kept my eyes on the road, praying for an end, a sign, a town, a light, a person, anything. But deep down, I knew. This was no shortcut. It never had been. I must have driven another 20 minutes after seeing that figure. In the back seat. Or maybe it was 5, or maybe it was an hour. Time had stopped meaning anything. The dashboard clock still read 5:44 p.m., unwavering, and outside the sky hovered in that eerie purgatory between day and night, like it couldn't decide which way to tip. I kept my eyes forward, knuckles white on the steering wheel, heart pounding with such insistence it almost masked the sound that had returned. Those whispers, quiet but deliberate, like dozens of voices murmuring in unison just behind my ear. They didn't grow louder, but they didn't stop either. They pulsed through the silence, a quiet chorus of something deeply wrong. I tried to drown them out with the radio again, cycling through static on every frequency, until one channel clicked into clarity. But instead of music or a voice, it played only a low humming noise, like the distant echo of wind through a cave, or a malfunctioning speaker trying to tune in to something that wasn't supposed to be heard. I switched it off. I didn't want to hear more. Then came the sign, the one I hadn't seen before, even though I must have passed it at least twice. No exit beyond this point, in flaking black paint, nailed to a crooked, bark-stripped tree. But it wasn't the sign that made my blood run cold. It was the small object nailed just beneath it, a car key identical to mine, rusted, bent at the tip. I stopped the car and got out, half certain I would wake up if I touched it or maybe confirm I'd completely lost my mind. But the second my shoes hit the ground, I heard it again. My name. Not whispered this time, but spoken. Clear. Crisp. As if someone had leaned right into my ear and breathed it out. Daniel. I spun around, fists clenched, teeth bared against fear. No one. Nothing. Just the stillness of the forest pressing in again, oppressive and thick, the air now so heavy, it felt like breathing underwater. I turned to the woods beside the road, the trees growing so close together they looked like bars in a prison. Something moved between them, just a shadow at first, Then it stepped forward. A woman. Or at least something shaped like one. Her dress was pale, almost gray-blue, stained at the hem and shredded like it had been dragged through thorns. Her hair hung like wet ropes over her shoulders, concealing most of her face. I stood frozen as she raised a hand, not in greeting, but pointing directly at me. No speech, no sound. Just a long, bony finger stretched toward my chest like a silent accusation. I blinked. She was gone. I ran back to the car, heart in my throat, fumbling the keys into the ignition. It turned, reluctantly. I slammed the pedal and tore off down the road, eyes darting between the road and the mirrors, terrified she'd appear in the back seat or beside the car or in the middle of the road. But the road remained straight, endless, and empty, except for one thing that hadn't been there before, a single dilapidated gas station standing crookedly under a flickering red sign that read, "Open," even though the building looked abandoned. Its windows were covered in grime, and the pumps were so old they had rotary dials. I hesitated, then pulled in. Not for fuel, but because I needed to see another structure, another piece of the world, to convince myself I hadn't driven completely off the edge of reality. I stepped out and approached the door. A faded sign dangled from the glass. "Back soon." I peered through the window. Inside was a single counter, dusty shelves stocked with ancient snacks, and a chair turned away from the window. Someone sat in it, motionless. I knocked. No reaction. I knocked again, harder. Nothing. Then the chair began to slowly swivel toward me. But instead of a face, the person's head was wrapped in what looked like an old burlap sack, cinched at the neck with wire. They didn't move further. Didn't get up. Just sat, facing me as if waiting for me to do something. I bolted back to the car and peeled out of the lot. The gas station vanished behind me faster than it should have. The road was no longer smooth. It began to feel warped beneath the tires, like I was driving on old boards that creaked beneath me, though I knew I was still on pavement. My arms trembled on the wheel. My mind flipped between terror and confusion, searching for logic, some explanation. A gas leak in the car? Hallucination, some strange dream? But no matter how hard I tried to ground myself, nothing changed. The road kept stretching. My phone wouldn't turn on now, not even a flicker. I passed the same twisted tree again. And again. And then something new. A barn, old and sagging, its door hanging open. A warm orange light pulsed faintly from within. As I drove past, I couldn't help but glance, and froze. There was someone inside, tall, still, their silhouette just visible in the glow. They didn't move, didn't follow, just stood, watching. The next time I passed the barn, the door was closed, but the light was brighter. On the third pass, the barn was gone entirely. The whispers in the car became louder, layered with new tones, pleading, sobbing, angry, chanting. I slammed the dashboard. "Shut up!" I screamed. Silence returned instantly, which was somehow worse. I felt them watching me from somewhere, behind, the trees, beneath the road, inside the very air. Then, without warning, my car began to slow on its own, the pedal stiff under my foot. I punched it, twisted the key, but it was like something else had taken control. The car rolled to a stop in front of a clearing I hadn't seen before. In the center was a signpost made of bones, not metaphorical bones, real ones, human, lashed together with twine and wire. A weathered wooden board was nailed across the top. It read, "You stayed too long." My mouth went dry. I shifted into reverse. The car wouldn't budge. I slammed my fists into the steering wheel, shouted every curse I knew, screamed into the empty road. Nothing. The trees were silent again, expectant. I felt like I was being measured, assessed. And then the worst sensation of all washed over me. Recognition. Not of the place, but of the moment. Like I'd done this before. Been here before. The sign, the road, the whispers, the same loop. The same hopeless spiral. I sat back in the seat, shaking, suddenly remembering something from earlier that didn't register then. A noise, faint but distinct, like the sound of another car. Had I passed one? Was someone else out here? I looked around now, desperately scanning for headlights, brake lights, anything. But the road remained empty. And then it hit me. If this place was looping, if the road fed off those who entered, then maybe someone had tried to leave before. Maybe many had. Maybe they had failed. Maybe that's why I was alone now. Or worse, not alone at all. Just the last new arrival. A prisoner in someone else's failure. The thought made me cold. I started the car again. This time it worked. I turned the wheel and drove. I didn't care where, I just needed to move. Because something had changed and I didn't want to be sitting still when it decided to show itself again. I drove as if something was clawing at the back of my car, though I never dared to look in the rearview mirror again, not after what I thought I saw there earlier. The wheels spun against the road like I was trying to outrun a nightmare that had found a body to inhabit. The forest outside no longer felt like forest. The trees had grown too close, leaning unnaturally inward, as if listening, or worse, as if waiting for something. Their shadows crawled across the road even though there was no clear source of light. I tried to keep my breathing steady, gripping the steering wheel so tightly it felt like my hands would seize. My mind was unspooling in real time, but I couldn't stop thinking. If this place wasn't on any map, if it didn't belong to any town or territory, then what exactly had I entered? A fold in the world? A trap? Something built to mimic roads and forests but not designed for escape? I didn't know. I only knew one thing. The road wanted me to give up. I could feel it. The fatigue was crawling in my bones now, and I couldn't tell if it was physical or something else. Like it had, seeped in through the air, convincing me to pull over, just rest, just surrender to whatever fate had swallowed this place whole. But I kept moving. Then out of nowhere the trees opened up to reveal a clearing I hadn't seen before, and nestled in the middle was something so absurd it nearly broke the spell of fear. An old roadside diner. One of those 1950s-style chrome and neon places, with checkered tiles and a red spinning sign that read, "Diner" in glowing script, flickering like it had run out of voltage 50 years ago. The building looked pristine, untouched by time, with one major difference: it was utterly silent. No music, no clatter of plates, no hum of life. Just stillness. I stopped the car in the dirt lot and stepped out, knowing full well it might be another trap, but at this point I needed something real, even if it meant walking into the lion's den. The diner door opened with a soft jingle, and I immediately smelled something strange. Not food, but a faint mix of gasoline and flowers. The booths were empty. The jukebox stood lit in the corner but didn't play. There was a woman behind the counter, her back to me. She was tall, dressed in an outdated pink uniform with a white apron tied tight around her narrow waist. Her hair was curled, perfectly styled, too perfect. I took a cautious step forward. "Hello?" I said, my voice sounding small in the vast echoing silence. The woman turned slowly. Her face was wrong. Not grotesque or monstrous, just too still, too symmetrical, as if it had been painted on. Her eyes didn't blink. They looked at me, but through me, like she was seeing something far behind where I stood. "Coffee?" she asked in a voice like a recording, flat and slightly slowed. "No," I said, backing away a step. Where am I?" "You should sit," she said, nodding to one of the booths. "You've been driving a long time." "I don't want to sit," I snapped. "I want to leave. I want directions." "A map. Anything." She tilted her head, still smiling, and then something flickered behind her eyes like a tiny spark. "No one leaves," she whispered. Then louder, she repeated, "Coffee?" I bolted for the door. The bell jingled again as I shoved it open, sprinting back to the car, but the lot was gone. My car was gone. In its place was a patch of scorched earth, blackened and steaming with the faint outline of tire tracks leading into the woods. Except they didn't lead anywhere. They just ended. I turned around to look at the diner again, but it too had vanished. In its place stood a twisted sculpture of metal and glass, barely recognizable, like a car that had been crushed and melted, and then left to rust. My knees buckled. I sat on the ground, choking on panic, on the terrible realization that this place was changing with me, adapting. It was no longer repeating the same loop. It was learning. It knew what I feared. It knew how to lure me. The road wasn't just endless, it was alive, and it wanted me. I wandered forward, not sure where I was going, until I found myself back on the road again. But this time something was different. There were signs, real ones, lining the side like they'd always been there. "Turn back," one read. "You're not ready," said another. "She's waiting." The last one chilled me the most. "You've been here before." I kept walking, no longer sure if I was dreaming, dead, or caught in some temporal net that frayed the longer I struggled. The trees whispered my name again. "Daniel." This time it came from ahead. A girl's voice. Soft, sad, familiar. I knew that voice. I shouldn't have, but I did. I followed it without thinking, my heart clawing at my ribs with every step. I walked until I saw her. My sister, Emily, standing at the edge of the road in her old yellow hoodie, the one she'd worn the night she died. A drunk driver hit her on her walk home from school. She was 16. That had been 10 years ago, but there she stood exactly as I remembered her. No blood, no wounds, just Emily. "You can't leave," she said. "Why not?" I croaked. My throat was raw, like I hadn't spoken in days. "Because you haven't chosen," she replied. Her face didn't move. "You have to choose before the road lets you go." "Choose what?" I begged. She turned away, her figure beginning to fade like mist under a street lamp. "What do I choose, Emily?" I shouted. But she was gone. In her place stood a doorway, not attached to a building, just a freestanding door, painted red with a brass handle. It pulsed faintly as if beckoning. Behind me, the road stretched on. Ahead of me, the door waited. I stood paralyzed. That's when the ground began to shake. Not a violent tremor, but a deep, rhythmic thudding, like heavy footsteps approaching from beneath the earth. The whispers returned, louder now, urgent. Some pleading, some screaming, some chanting a name I didn't understand. I ran for the door, grabbed the handle and pulled it open. Nothing but darkness inside, cold and infinite. I hesitated. Behind me, the road cracked open like an egg, splitting at the center, revealing something massive and moving far below. A shape, like a serpent made of roots and ash, rising slowly. I didn't wait. I stepped through the door. The world flipped. There was no sensation of falling when I stepped through the red door. No lurch in my gut, no wind rushing past my ears. It was worse than that. It was as if everything, sound, gravity, time, paused, like a held breath in the lungs of the universe. And I was stuck inside it. For a second, I thought I'd died. But then the silence gave way to something worse. Memories. Not dreams, not fragments. Full, living memories that didn't belong to me. I was standing in a dim, flickering hallway lined with doors, each one identical to the one I'd just walked through, but etched with names. I approached one, trembling, and read, the brass plate, "Thomas Weaver, entered 1981. The door pulsed slightly, like something was breathing on the other side. I backed away, and as I turned, I saw more names. Hundreds, maybe thousands, stretching endlessly in either direction. Every door a person. Every door a story. My head spun as I realized what this place was. It wasn't a road at all. The road was the bait. This was the trap. A place built from memory and fear, custom-made for each unlucky soul that stumbled upon it. I walked down the hallway, passing doors labeled with names I didn't recognize but somehow felt. Names that scratched at something buried inside me, and then I saw it. Emily Reed, entered 2014. My sister's name. My breath hitched. The door handle was warm when I touched it. I opened it slowly, expecting anything: blood, fire, emptiness. But what I saw was worse. Our living room, just as it had looked the night she died. The couch still sagging from years of use, the old TV humming faintly, and Emily sitting cross-legged on the carpet, flipping through a photo album. She didn't look up. She just kept turning pages. "Emily," I whispered. Her fingers froze. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, still not looking at me. "You're not supposed to remember." "Remember what?" I asked, stepping inside, closing the door behind me. "That I followed you," she said, finally raising her eyes. "That I saw you on that road the night I died. You weren't at home like you said. You were driving. You found it too, didn't you? Just like me." I shook my head, trying to deny it, but pieces were clicking together, memories I had buried resurfacing. An argument with our parents, me leaving in the middle of the night driving to cool off, a strange road I'd turned onto by accident. I had found it, but I'd forgotten. Until now. "It lets some of us go," Emily said, voice softer now, "but only if we leave a piece behind. Only if we bring someone back in return." My mouth went dry. "Is that what you are? My price?" She smiled sadly. "I was your guilt. That's how it found you again. You forgot me, Daniel. You forgot what you did." "I didn't kill you," I snapped. "I know," she said. "But you left me, and that was enough." She stood now, walking toward me slowly. "This place doesn't care about laws or logic. It only wants pain, memory, fear. It wants stories. It feeds on them. We're the ink, Daniel." I backed away, heart pounding. "Then how do I leave?" "You don't," she said gently. "Not unless someone else takes your place. Not unless you bring another soul down the road." I shook my head. "I won't do that." "You say that now," she replied. "But give it time. The road doesn't just trap you. It changes you. It offers things. It whispers secrets. Eventually you'll find someone lost, someone desperate like you were, and you'll take them for a ride." I couldn't speak. I stumbled backward out of the room, slamming the door behind me. Her words echoed in my head. "Eventually you'll find someone." I ran down the hallway, the doors now slamming open on their own as I passed, each one showing a scene of someone breaking, someone screaming, someone giving in. It wasn't a corridor anymore. It was a library of torment cataloged by the road, each story sealed in a cell. I reached the end of the hall, if it could even be called an end, and found another door. This one didn't have a name, just a mirror. I stared into it, expecting my reflection, but what stared back wasn't me. It looked like me, but the eyes were wrong. Cold, empty, smiling. The mirror version raised a hand and beckoned. I turned the handle and stepped through. And just like that, I was back in the car, on the road, engine idling, sky gray, clock blinking 5:44 p.m. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined everything. But then I looked in the rearview mirror and saw her, Emily, sitting quietly in the back seat, her face blank, watching. "It starts over now," she said. "You get to live it all again. The road won't let you go until you choose." "Choose what?" I asked, voice trembling. "Choose who takes your place," she whispered. The radio crackled on its own, static giving way to a slow, droning hum. I drove. Not because I wanted to, but because there was nowhere else to go. The road curved now, subtly different. A new turn I hadn't seen before. I followed it. Hours passed, or maybe days, I don't know. I stopped counting. The forest changed around me. Sometimes it looked normal, sometimes ancient and alien, with trees that moved when I wasn't looking. I stopped seeing other structures, Stopped hoping. Until tonight. Tonight I saw headlights up ahead. A car, real, tangible, parked awkwardly on the shoulder, and a person standing beside it, waving me down. They looked scared, lost, just like I had been. I slowed down, heart hammering, torn in 1,000 directions. If I stopped, if I let them in, what then? Did I trade their soul for mine? Would the road finally let me leave? I looked in the rearview mirror. Emily's seat was empty. But the whispers had returned, louder, hungrier. And beneath them, something darker. A voice I hadn't heard before. One that didn't whisper, it commanded. Choose. I stared at the stranger outside. Young, alone, crying. Their phone held in one hand, eyes wide as they saw my car approaching. I pulled over, rolled down the window. You okay? I asked. They nodded shakily. I think I'm lost. There's no signal. I've been driving in circles. I looked at the empty passenger seat, then at the road ahead, then at them. Hop in, I said quietly. I know the way.